Aaron.
Here.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron.
You done messed up, Aaron.
Aaron is right here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day's a great day not to be in a cult. Scientology done messed up. I mean, any day where you have the largest media personality in the world just ridiculing you, your founder, your story, your myths, you done something to done mess up. It is amazing how often Scientology comes up on the Joe Rogan podcast. And every time it comes up, I love highlighting it for one reason, guys. One reason. Scientologists love Joe Rogan. Guys, I'm a fan of Joe Rogan. I'm not crapping on Scientologists for being a fan of Joe Rogan, but Scientologists love Joe Rogan. And I love shoving it in their faces that the biggest media personality in the world, a guy who almost all of them love, just regularly takes massive steaming dumps all over them. And if Joe keeps this up, he's going to end up being on the restricted, the banned book list, essentially whatever the YouTube version of the banned book list is. There was one book when I was little that I remember got banned in Scientology. It's called The Gods of Eden. And it has to do with how early civilization and early life was guided by an alien presence. It's actually a theme that you hear on the Joe Rogan Experience all the time. And it was a banned book in Scientology because it was a little too close to the confidential materials that Scientologists aren't supposed to know about. And in Scientology, it's sort of considered that if there's something floating around like a book or a movie or something that is kind of a little too close to the confidential material, they might say it's kind of stimulative. It's kind of electrifying. It gets people a little excited in a way that Scientology is uncomfortable with. So anyway, that's just an example of a book getting banned. I got to tell you, honestly, for Joe Rogan to constantly be talking about the XENU story, the OT3 story, making fun of L. Ron Hubbard, making fun of the Sea Org, I swear to God, it is not going to be too much longer before it is forbidden for Scientologists to listen to the Joe Rogan Experience. And I got to tell you, I'm shocked that any Scientologists are ever allowed to go on the Joe Rogan Experience. I was trying to think as I was getting ready for this video, what other Scientologists I could think of other than the knees over toes guy. Let me see his actual name. I won't screen share this, but there's this guy. He's sort of a fitness athletic guy. He's called the Knees Over Toes guy is actually the name of his YouTube channel, the Knees Over Toes guy. He's got a company called ATG Personal Training, ATG Personal Training Reinvented. Am I going to be able to find his name here? I don't know. Oh, look, the website's even got all sorts of links to his appearances on the Joe Rogan Experience. What in the heck is this dude's name? Well, I don't have the patience to sit here and look for it, but if you guys Google Knees Over Toes guy, he's totally a big-time Scientologist, lives here in Clearwater where I live. He's been on the Joe Rogan Experience a couple times. Someone's asking, is Andrew Schultz a Scientologist? Hell no, Andrew Schultz is not a Scientologist. No. Okay, but anyway, let's get to it. At least this segment about Scientology is a little bit more of a somewhat thoughtful conversation on the subject of cults and religion in Scientology than the last time Joe brought it up. The last time Joe brought it up, they were just playing the South Park episode and laughing really, really hard at the entire thing. This thing that I'm about to play for you, it was from this week. It was from an interview that Joe did with a woman named Michelle Dowd, who grew up in a cult. She has a crazy story. As soon as I started listening to this video, I shot her a message on Twitter. She answered me back with a little bit of luck. I'll be able to do a chat with Michelle live on this channel. That would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. So let's check it out. There's about a 5-6 minute segment of this video where they're talking about religion, cults, but specifically Scientology. So let me share this with you guys and let's have a little bit of fun.
So I think a more interesting question actually is why are these cults?
Let me see. What speed am I going to play this on? Yeah, this is, well, let's play it on normal speed. How about that?
Not shut down. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Like, I think a more interesting question actually is why are these cults not shut down? I mean, there's a bunch of them. Like you said, someone told you there's just tons of them that are active in California, and I don't know if it's the freedom of speech that we have going on.
Isn't the real question like how do you define a cult?
Yeah.
because Scientology has tax exempt status in the United States, which indicates that it's a legitimate religion. Because they sued the IRS, they got
and they won.
They smart. They got thousands of dudes threatened to sue the IRS, and they filed lawsuits. And I guess the IRS caved and said, "All right, we don't want to deal with all this."
Well,
which is really powerful of them.
It really is. But also, if you declare yourself a religion, then
Mhm.
you do get tax exempt status. But I think what makes a cult is, yeah, I mean, there's like the Steve Hassan thing that we talked about, but this is really, really high control. But the question is, unless the abuse is reported in real time, it's really hard to find. And the people who are in the cult, A, don't recognize it's a cult because nobody's in a cult calls it a cult.
Right.
And then B, are loyal to the cult. So they're not talking.
Right.
Like you can't just go in and ask people. They're not going to tell you.
Right.
I would not have told you. There's no way. When I was 16, I would never have this conversation.
Right.
Okay, good. I just wanted to jump in and say, it's also amazing how often Steve Hassan's name gets name dropped on the JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience. Steve Hassan, he's a guy who wrote a book, Combating Cult Mind Control. He's written a bunch of books, but I've mentioned Combating Cult Mind Control on this, in my videos a whole bunch. And back before Joe really blew up, before his podcast really became huge, Steve Hassan was actually a guest on the JRE. So kudos to Steve for continuing to get name dropped on JRE. Let's keep going. Oh yeah, someone's asking, is this a recent interview? Yeah, this was just this week, guys.
Right.
Not publicly. I wouldn't have had it privately either.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think it's a cult if it's the truth. If you think it's the
Right.
truth, you think this isn't a cult. We're just the people living the right way.
Right.
Yeah. But
And there's
isn't
a
that,
lot of people who believe that, I think,
yeah,
about
well,
themselves.
they believe that about religions too. I mean, the fact that people want to say that there's certain people that talk historically about the Christian religion and they refer to it as a cult, just historically. This is the Christian cult, and this is what they did. As you would say, this is the Hindu cult, this is this cult, that cult. They don't think of it as we have this problem like religion, cult, different things. But it's groups of people that have very specific rules that you need to live by that's mandated by a higher power.
Yes.
If you just break it down to what the ingredients are, you could tell me it's a steak, but it has all the ingredients of a carrot cake. I think this might be a carrot cake. No. We call it a steak. But it seems like it's got carrots. It seems like a carrot cake, and that's religion and cult. There's this very blurry line. So Scientology should win that lawsuit. So who's to say what their Mormons aren't legit or they are legit? Okay, so they get tax exempt status, but Scientology doesn't. Why?
Yeah, I don't think you can come up with a legitimate reason why. And in all these groups, Scientology and Mormonism.
Now that's an interesting statement that she made, and that would be a fun conversation for me and Michelle to have. Obviously, can't do a whole interview on that subject, but that's a very interesting conversation to have. Why is it that Mormonism should have tax exempt, be entitled to have tax exemption, but Scientology not? I do have some opinions on that. I do believe Scientology is uniquely unqualified for tax exemption amongst these. When I call Scientology a religion, people get all bent out of shape, but you guys know what I mean. Amongst organizations that the IRS has granted religious tax exemption to, I do believe Scientology is uniquely unqualified for it, and that you could strip Scientology of its tax exemption without somehow being dishonest about not treating it fairly. And that would be a fun conversation to have.
Too, there's these inner circles that are much, much more devout. So there's plenty of people who define themselves as Mormon or Scientologists who aren't living this really narrow life, but the people at the center are.
But that's the question: is how hard is it to form a religion? Is it really easy? How easy is it to get that tax exempt status? How many people do you need?
I can do it.
I bet you could do it.
I feel like I could do it.
I bet you could do it for sure.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. It's how many? You would imagine that everybody would be doing it. It's a great way to just trick the government.
Okay, I have to jump in here because I got to tell you, it is the easiest thing in the world to get tax exempt status for any nonprofit organization. And it is kind of an interesting conversation of, well, why is it that the SPTV Foundation, it's very easy to get tax exempt status, and yet we all want Scientology to lose its tax exempt status? It's a very interesting conversation, and it's one that is very much worth having. I think it's also worth noting that the type of tax exemption that an organization like the SPTV Foundation has as simply a 501c3 is simply not the same type of tax exemption that Scientology has as a religious organization. When Scientology ends up in a court of law, because of the type of recognition it has from the IRS, the judges, the courts are prohibited. They are barred from interpreting in any way the policies of Scientology because it's considered religious scripture. If the SPTV Foundation was dragged into court, it would have no such protection from the courts. So there's different types of tax exemption, which is a little bit of a nuance that's missing in these statements from Joe here.
Sure.
You don't have to give him any money.
Yeah. I think someone did that, right, Jamie? Like a spaghetti monster or something, and actually created the church of that.
And you got they got tax exempt status for that? The flying spaghetti monster. Well, it would be really hard to argue, especially when you're dealing with something like Scientology, when you have a science fiction writer who is, you know, he's the most prolific fiction writer of all time. L. Ron Hubbard he wrote more words down and had them published than any human being that's ever lived.
I think he was a Boy Scout too, actually.
Was he?
Yeah, we should check that one, but I think he was.
My favorite is when he's in the Sea Org and he's got like this military jacket on and just gave himself a bunch of medals. He's got like this stacks of medals.
Have you gone to the museum?
Which one?
I think there's more than one, but there's the one in Hollywood.
No, I didn't. I've met with them before. I got audited. Where you hold on to the cans and they do the thing.
I did that, and you could feel the energy.
I was filming a television show.
Did Maureen just say that she did that too? Let me rewind this. Because by the way, when Joe says he was audited, I unfortunately, I think what Joe means is he received one of those stress tests on the e-meter where they're trying to sell him something, not actual auditing. But let's listen to this again. Hold on.
Show into the cans and they
do the thing. I did that, and you could feel the energy.
She did. She said she did it too.
Was filming a television show in San Diego, and we were near a park, and I wasn't as famous back then. I could get away with it. They didn't know who I was. And I sat down with this dude, and he went through the whole thing with me with the e-meter, and he's telling me, and I realized somewhere along the line that he's just a dude who joined Scientology, and now part of his job is to go out and convert, but he's not very good at it. Like
he didn't convert you?
No. Well, not only that, he's not good at selling it. He was like very non-enthusiastic about it, because I would have thought that like all the cult members were like super pumped to get you to join, but this guy was just like lost. Like I guess this is my people now, and hold on to the e-meter. So it was interesting. It's like he wasn't even like. It reshaped in my mind. I was like, every person trying to indoctrinate you into this cult is going to be like really charismatic and really locked in. No, those are the leaders.
Right.
They get the regular folks to go out to the park and annoy people and get yelled at. You fucking wackadoo. Like, so that's the guy that I met.
The people at the top don't want to do that.
It was very weird.
I feel like you could be a cult leader, Joe, if you wanted to be.
I can't believe she said that to Joe. It's great, though. It's great.
I don't think it's that hard.
I feel like you could.
I don't think it's that hard.
If you decided it was one of your life goals, hit me up and I'll give you some like tips, and you'll be
really
there
interested.
in another week or two. No.
I'm not interested. If it's a cult, it's a cult. You could leave anytime. And there's no requirements, and just say you're in. When you're in, okay, you're not. I don't care.
I don't think the Pastafarians have tax exempt status.
But the Scientologists do. If you read the fucking story, anybody that reads that story, the story of the Thetans and the volcano and the aliens and the spirits,
it's really interesting.
It's crazy. It's crazy. If you read Lawrence Wright's Going Clear, it's a very fascinating book that sort of details the whole history of L. Ron Hubbard creating it. And he was basically a crazy person who was self-diagnosed. And so
guys, I'm sorry I keep interrupting the interview, but if you are a Scientologist and you are a fan of Joe Rogan, you have to come to terms with the fact that this is what Joe thinks of L. Ron Hubbard. Let's hear it again, guys.
Creating it, and he was basically a crazy person who was self-diagnosing. And so he was like self-counseling. He was using all these self-help books and psychology books, trying to figure out how to live life, and that was Dianetics.
Yeah. You've read some of that, right?
Yeah, well, I bought it. I in the 1990s, they had those infomercials where it was the volcano and the books were flying out of the volcano. It's funny. And I didn't know that it meant like, I didn't know the whole story behind the volcano where like the aliens throw the fucking frozen souls in the volcano, all that crazy shit. So I just thought it was a self-help book. And back then I was really into self-help books. I bought like Anthony Robbins audio cassettes and all that shit. I was into things like that.
Sure.
And so I was like, oh, that seemed like how to maximize your life in this commercial. I'm like, oh, interesting. So I bought it online or on the phone. I think back then you called. It wasn't online. And they never.
Oh my goodness. He's talking about back in the day with the infomercials and the Dianetics hotline. This is wild.
Never stopped sending me shit. They sent me shit for
Oh.
years. For years.
Yeah.
It was invitations to this and invitations to that, and half off of this and free that, and come here and meet with us. And they just wouldn't stop. They just bombarded me with stuff.
Well, you would be a good get if they could get you. So you had all these iterations of like these self-help, stages of all these things through all of it, right? All the ways that you have self-helped in a sense. So what has been the most useful to you in being the kind of person you want?
All right, that's the end of that clip. Guys, I'm looking at the live chat and people are going crazy. What is has the stream ended or something? Let me give me a second here. I'm still live. Stream unavailable. Wow. Okay, I don't know what happened. Wow. Huh. I'm going to keep streaming. Wow. I got no clue what happened, guys. It says I'm still streaming. So I guess I'm going to end this stream and see what happens.